Welcome to the Anxious Love Coach podcast, a place for creating meaningful, conscious, secure, long-term partnerships. Here, we talk relationship anxiety and creating healthy, magnetic dynamics within partnership to help you feel confident and alive within committed partnership. My name is Natalie Kennedy, and I'm your host. I'm a relationship anxiety coach and meditation teacher. I've worked with hundreds of clients battling anxiety, and after experiencing extraordinary shifts in my own healing relative to partnership, now combine my lived personal experience and professional training to help others trust themselves within relationship and in their lives. I've been to the edge and back with my now husband from relationship anxiety and come out confidently to the other side. I want to pass the tools I've learned along to you to help you trust yourself in relationships and also create magnetic, hot dynamics with your partner. I believe lots of mainstream relationship advice today can make us anxious and dissatisfied. So let's jump in and normalize challenges that modern relationships and real people go through while also giving you tools to trust yourself, drop the shame, and alchemize your messy, twisted relational truths into profound inner wisdom and aliveness. If you haven't yet, be sure to join my communities over on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Anxious Love Coach. You can also request a 30-minute relationship anxiety assessment with me depending on availability, or ask me a question over on my website at www.anxiouslovecoach.com. I've also got a wonderful relationship anxiety meditation available to you as thanks for subscribing to my email list. Thanks for being here and enjoy this episode. Welcome back to the podcast. I am so excited about this episode today because I am bringing on a guest who is very, very qualified to be speaking on relationship anxiety and ROCD. Some of you may have noticed I have somewhat mostly removed the terminology ROCD from my language, mainly because I am not a licensed therapist and don't feel qualified to be speaking on a disorder or anything diagnostic. However, as a meditation teacher, a yoga teacher, and also recently with some training that I've received, I feel pretty comfortable speaking on trauma and the experience of the body and how that manifests inside the body. However, in terms of disorders and OCD specifically, because there's so many extensive variations of it, I have, as a means of protection, both of myself, but also you, because I don't want you to diagnose yourself with something that you may or may not have. I would prefer you to actually go to a licensed therapist or some practitioner that can formally diagnose you with OCD before you listen to my podcast. However, if you do have the diagnosis, I believe you will still find a lot of value from my content. Anyway, that was a little segue. Today, we will be using the terms ROCD because I actually am bringing on a registered counselor and internal family systems therapist. His name is Alex Bishop, and not only does he have credentials working with people with ROCD, but he also has had extensive experience with it and has largely overcome it. So this is someone who really understands what you're experiencing, whether you have a diagnosis or not. These clusters of symptoms of overthinking and obsessing and following through on compulsions to overthink your relationship, we get it. So his name is Alex Bishop. As I mentioned before, he is a registered counselor and also IFS or internal family systems therapist. I looked at his list of internal family systems trainings. It is extensive. Wow. So he works with clients with ROCD through the use of IFS therapy. So in this episode, I'm going to ask him about his particular flavors of ROCD that he's experienced. You'll notice there's a lot of attraction-based obsessions and themes, for instance. And we're also going to speak about how he overcame it, and also what internal family systems is and how the IFS model can be helpful for so many people with relationship OCD or anxiety, or really, hopefully you'll start to put together that internal family systems is a way of thinking and a way of being and a way of life, and it can help you with so many things anxiety related beyond relationship OCD. So I think you're going to get a lot out of this. I'm very excited. I will say that once we dive into this episode, this interview / conversation is going to carry us all the way to the end. But I also want to tell you something before we start the episode, and that is that our next Patreon call is going to be on August 3rd at 10 a.m. Pacific time. And I've made a couple changes. If you are in the second tier patron for $9 a month, that's my ALC super fam. I've made changes where you're now going to be able to unmute yourself and ask me questions live on the call. So it's going to be after our meditation and embodiment session. I'm going to answer a few questions that were put in the comments, top rated questions, and then I'm going to open up for a free for all where you can raise your hand and ask me anything. That is super cool. I wasn't doing that before. And if you are in our first tier ALC fam patrons, you're now going to be able to not only watch the calls in retrospect, you won't be able to attend live, but you can also ask me questions in the comments 3 days prior to the call. So that's really cool. I wanted to let you know I'm making that change. And the second thing is at 150 patrons, we're almost at 100 right now. Woohoo! Thank you. My husband Preston is going to be joining us for the Q&A. And he can speak on his experience with anxiety in our relationship and marriage, as well as what it was like to be on the receiving end of my relationship anxiety. So I don't know. I feel like I'm more excited than anybody because I believe, as someone who is with this man and has been with him for 11 years, he's got an enormous amount of wisdom to share. So please consider becoming a patron. I put the link in the show notes. And that's it. I'm going to quit babbling. Let's get on with our conversation with Alex. I hope you enjoy it and get so much out of it. All right. Hello, Alex.
Hey.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm so glad to have you
We've
on.
finally been able to get together and do this.
I know. I have actually I've been one of your clients
Right,
before.
right.
So it's awesome to have you on. There's so many people that are listeners of this podcast that are going to get so much out of this. I'm very grateful for you taking the time out of your busy schedule
No problem.
to chat with me.
Yeah, I'm happy
Yeah.
to be here.
Yeah. So, today I would love to pick your brain around internal family systems therapy and how it's been beneficial for both you as someone who's been both a facilitator of IFS, but also you've been obviously on the receiving end of IFS, and that's what has led to your breakthroughs um, of relationship OCD and relationship anxiety. So I'm hoping today that we can answer a lot of questions for people that are struggling with one foot in, one foot out in their relationships and how internal family systems therapy, whether they choose to find an IFS practitioner or whether they just start to take these principles into their own lives on their own, what they can do. So
Sounds good to
sounds
me.
good.
Let's do this. Sure.
Awesome. Yeah. So what's your relation? I know you had relationship OCD.
Yeah.
What's your story around that?
Oh gosh. Okay. Um, so where do I begin? So I've had relationship OCD since I started dating. Um, It showed up in my first long-term relationship. I was probably, how old was I? Not eight, 19 years old, I believe. When it hit me, I remember it hit me. I was laying in bed with her. I think I was going to sleep, and I was looking up at the ceiling. And I remember thinking, I just had that thought. What if I don't love my partner? And then I lost the feelings that I had initially because I was infatuated with her for, probably about a year. Then the feelings went. And, my cultural conditioning told me, well, if you don't have feelings anymore, you should probably find someone else you have feelings about. So, so that's where it started. And then from there, I felt incredible shame and guilt because I'd started a life with this person. We had all our belongings. We lived together. We had an apartment together. And I thought, how can I tell her that I don't have feelings? And I didn't know how to do that. And I didn't want to break her heart. So I felt like a horrible person, as many, I believe, do that struggle with this. Um, so the guilt was the worst, and the anxiety was surrounding at that time the idea of not only was I, would I be a horrible person, but I would have to deal with the pain of loss from leaving. So I didn't leave. I stayed, and at that time, I had no idea what relationship anxiety or ROCD was. I just thought that I no longer had feelings. So that was and it drove me crazy for a while. Um, I didn't actually end up telling her. One thing led to the next, and we ended up breaking up anyway, for a different reason. But that was the start. So fast forward, next relationship, long-term relationship, was together with her for 4 years. It wasn't about love anymore, but it was about attraction. That's when the attraction theme showed up for me, and that's been my primary. That's been my primary hook is what if I'm not attracted? So attracted in this relationship, and then all of a sudden she starts looking odd, and again, I have no idea what's happening. Why is my partner all of a sudden looking like
Odd.
odd?
Such a good word. Great word choice.
Right?
That captures it perfectly. Why do they look like
Yeah,
that?
yeah,
Mm,
right. Like, putty or Play-Doh or something, right? Their face just starts to look different. And so at that point, I had an inclination to Google it. So then I started Googling things, and I stumbled on relationship anxiety at that time. And it was just this one article. I didn't find anything else about it. I found this one article, and it just broke down what I was experiencing, and it told me how to deal with it. I think it was like what I read that was super impactful at that time was don't resist it, just move towards it. So I was like, okay. So I just imagined myself instead of like I could just feel myself what it would feel like to resist it, which was what I had been doing. Fuck, like, okay, this sucks. I don't want this. So this is what I was doing. I don't want this. I'm gonna resist it, which wasn't working. So instead of that, I just imagined myself moving towards the feeling of anxiety and the lack of attraction or whatever. And it worked. I'm like, oh, I can feel towards this. I can move towards this. And that actually helped me a lot. Um, what I think it was what Carl Jung said, what we resist persists. So, I learned that, hey, maybe resisting this isn't the answer. So that was before I even became a therapist. So,
mm.
anyway, long story short, let's fast forward to the relationship I'm in now with Dion. So fast forward to now, I'm in the relationship that I'm in. And for those of you who don't know, my partner's name is Dion, and she's also a therapist. So what had happened at this time, which this relationship was the most severe, that the relationship OCD hit me. It was really bad. And how what had happened was I was working with my father as a financial advisor, and I didn't like what I was doing at all. I didn't feel like it aligned with me at all. And for 5 years, I knew that it wasn't what I wanted to do. And eventually, I decided to have the conversation with my dad to leave and do something that I was more passionate about, which was to go move across the continent to the other side of the continent from Nova Scotia to Vancouver and do counseling. And so, huge career transition, huge move to a place I had no friends or nobody, and left the relationship that I had with Dion and to go somewhere else. And then we started doing long distance. Um, and when going to a new school and having to find a new job, and I worked at like late nights at a bar, you know, doing that, and so this massive transition basically it felt like it shattered me. And I got the thought again, what if I don't love my partner? And so that started the most recent relationship OCD journey where I didn't know if I loved her, I didn't know if I was attracted, I was overwhelmed, completely overwhelmed with anxiety and intrusive thoughts. I was sick, I couldn't sleep. I went to the merge for the psych emerge because I was losing my mind. It was to the point where I was completely delusional. I thought that crows outside meant that, my partner had been in a severe car accident and died. I was like completely just delusional. I was to the point where I remember walking in Vancouver in the city, and everyone I looked at looked like someone I knew back home. Like everyone's faces were the same. So that, of course, freaked me out. So I was really in a difficult place. And I found Cheryl Paul's work, which was very helpful initially. Don't fully align with everything she talks about now, but it's the basic premise of what she talks about and teaches. I definitely am really supportive of her work because it helped me a lot throughout my initial days. So yeah, that's maybe I'll pause there because I know I've kind of rambled a little bit, but yeah,
Yeah, I'm with you on every aspect of this. I know the experience well of feeling physically ill. Everything's a sign, and
everything's a sign. Yeah,
everything is a sign. Nothing is without sign. It's like everything
no,
is God is talking to you through every little
exactly.
thing. I know that feeling. I get chills because it's just in listening to your story now, Alex, I just remember how hard that was. And thank you for
Yeah.
sharing not just your story, but the extent of the pain, because a lot of people listening are where you were at that time and where I was at too, which is very
Oh,
similar.
it's completely
You
miserable.
can't,
It's like the
you can't
worst.
function. You
No,
can't function.
no. And
And
you're
it's,
carrying around all this anxiety and you can't do, and there, without anywhere to put it or without any, it's, you can't expose yourself to it because anyway, we could talk about
we'll
European
talk
stuff
about that in
later,
a
but
bit for sure. Yeah. And
so,
also
but
there's
yeah,
nowhere to put it because no matter where you go, if you tell most people today, if you
yep,
say this is about my partner, the first thing is they will say is, well, gosh, if you feel this bad, why don't you just end it? It doesn't have to be this way. And ooh, ouch, right?
yeah, that's the
Um,
last thing we want to hear, right?
that's the last thing we want to hear. And
And
after,
then all these attractive people are walking around.
yeah,
So
yeah,
you can't go anywhere because you're comparing your partner to other attract like if you have the attraction obsession, right? But so you get together with friends and then you worry you love your friend or a coworker, right? Well, maybe I like them more than my partner. So it's like there's triggers everywhere in the environment, and so
yeah.
if you're hearing this and you resonate, I really, and it sounds like you too, Natalie, like we get it. We get how bad it is.
Yep.
And yeah,
So painful. So when was you know, fortunately you're in a place right now where you're able to talk about it from a grounded place where it doesn't affect you as much, or if ever,
mhm.
a relationship anxiety OCD doesn't really affect me anymore. Once in a while, I fall into anxious traps. I guess the extent of it that I experience is where I just get the ick around my partner. I'm like, but there isn't this layer of judgment on top of it
That's right.
that
That's right.
there's like, ugh.
Well, it
but
takes a long, yeah,
but it's like I know that's gonna pass. It's of course that's happening. He had a rough day. He didn't get enough sleep last night. I didn't get enough sleep last night. So yeah, of course we're not gonna. He just left the door open after taking a big shit. Like like I'm not gonna feel rainbows and butterflies right now. But there isn't this
that's
like
right.
right that happens.
Oh, yeah, I mean, just being
But
human for sure.
there isn't this layer of a freak out about it. It's
No,
I know that
no,
tomorrow or in a week from now he's going to get a lot of sleep, or he's going to there's going to be a social interaction that he handles really well, and I'm going to be like ooh. So
that's right.
right, it all balances out. And I think with you and Dion, it's Dion, right? Not Dion. Dion,
Oh, you're back.
you there?
Yeah,
um you're Dion, not Dion, right?
yeah, Dion. Yeah,
Dion. And also, you guys have been together for such a long time now.
yeah. We've been
And
together 7 years now.
yeah, so you've built a track record of knowing what to expect. Whereas I think when you're experiencing relationship anxiety over the first 6 months, you don't know if it's going to be like this forever.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. I had a lot of help. I had a lot of help. I luckily the first therapist that I saw, and you said earlier about IFS and being it and it being kind of my way, whatever, however you said, take it out of ROCD. It actually wasn't.
Tell me
IFS,
more.
I learned IFS after I got through ROCD. Um,
Really? I
yeah,
didn't know that.
yeah, interestingly enough, it wasn't IFS. IFS definitely helped like later down the road. And like you're saying, I don't like I very much know I love my partner, like, and I know that I it's not because when I learned like let me backtrack a little bit. So um, I still got stuff that comes up too. Like I'm not by any means like I'm neurotic as hell. Like I'm completely neurotic. I'm anxious. I have depressive episodes. I get super obsessive about money and about uh just things. It doesn't latch onto my relationship anymore, or at least as much. I think it's realistic to know that like for people like OCD in itself is a complex issue. Like so whether you resonate with OCD or relationship anxiety, I think relationship anxiety, I like ROCD because it encompasses the issue. I think it describes the issue a little bit better. But OCD is a complex issue in itself, let alone being disorganized in attachment. Like having this, are avoidant and anxious subparts that in addition to OCD, it's a lot. So the healing can take a long time. So for me, I don't obsess about my relationship anymore, but I still feel avoidant. Like I still have lack of interest in being connected. I still feel like pushing my partner away, but the difference is like you said now is it doesn't matter to me because I know my patterns. Like I know it's like cool, I'm feeling avoidant right now. I need to make sure that I respect my body and my nervous system and my parts and not try and push past feeling avoidant. Like I gotta check in. What's going on? Like what instead of like, oh my God, I'm feeling avoidant, must mean something about my relationship. Say I don't do that anymore. I don't fall into that cycle anymore. I think that's the difference. I don't get anxious about it. It's like, hey, not attracted to my partner right now because that still happens. Not going to be attracted to my partner all the time, whether she's in a mood or you're right. For you, like you left the door, whatever. There's times like attractions that I'm going to flow. When I'm feeling disconnected, might not be attracted. When she's feeling disconnected or tired, she might not appear the same. We all these little muscles in our face, like we change, our look changes and our perception changes. So I think from more of a cognitive standpoint, I know these things and they're so ingrained that I'm like, it's just not a big deal anymore. And I think also our connection's so strong now that it's not like I'm not looking for this magical relationship anymore. Like she's a solid friend and she's a romantic friend, right? It's like she's a friend and we're intimate with one another in ways that friends aren't. Like I feel like when we've built such a solid foundation of trust and respect for one another and we know each other so deeply that it's become things have changed. I still struggle with things and I still get caught sometimes, but it's just not a big deal anymore, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So what was the thing that shifted all of it for
Oh
you?
yeah. So yeah, going back. So I worked with a I worked with a CBT, someone that did CBT but also did parts work. So it was like parts work CBT combined. And that helped me to that really helped me to distance myself from what I was experiencing. So I got space from the parts. And that helped me initially because I was able to name it for what it was and not get caught in it. Didn't heal any wounds. We didn't look at my childhood or anything. So that was the initial, that helped me manage it. So I got a hold on it from there. From there, in my counseling program, for those of you who don't know, I did a little bit of a different route of counseling. It was all experiential. So we did we it was 2 years and we worked on each other for the 2 years. We didn't sit in class and learn and just look at a screen. We were like it was experiential. So we were doing breath work, we were doing movement and dance therapy, we were doing CBT on each other and DBT and narrative therapy and psychodramas. So we did like reenactments of trauma and doing that type of processing. So I feel like a lot of healing came from that as well. Like I can't name exactly what it was that it was just a culmination. I was doing a bunch of psychedelics at that time,
I love that you own
like,
that. Yeah.
you know, like
Yep.
and I was doing a lot of mushrooms, and Dion and I would do mushrooms together, and we do it therapeutically. So we did it recreationally as well, but we also did, like, we'd lay in bed together and we'd dose and we just have our experiences together. And and I did ceremonies, like mushroom ceremonies, got with guidance, and
Amazing.
I feel like a lot of healing came from that as well, because it got me out of my neurotic patterns, and it I got a break from it. I could look back at things and look, when I was having these experiences, I saw the truth of everything. It was like, what am I freaking out about? Like, what, and I was
But you
able to
can't see it when
objective.
you're in it, when
No.
you're and for those of you that are listening to this, it's like it you can conceptually understand that it's not a big deal, but it's different from actually experiencing it somatically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I like, on my these experiences, how do I say it? Getting to God, going to that place of oneness and experiencing the truth of everything, and seeing life in a really different way than my normal kind of neurotic patterns. And those experiences, and by no means were they easy. I mean, a lot of it was very difficult, and stuff that I had to go through and stuff I had to look at, and the feelings that come up from these experiences. And I, just so you know, I wouldn't recommend them for everybody. So do your own research and get it, do your due diligence on that stuff if you want to try it. Don't just do it. So discretion there. But the psychedelic medicines have changed my life in very dramatic ways. So I think it was a combination between, like, initial psychotherapy, like the school that I went to, psychedelics, and then, and Cheryl Paul's work, and all of that combined helped me to really shift how I feel within myself and in the world and my relationship. And couples work helped too, a lot. And so
Yeah.
kind of
I
hit
love
it from,
that.
like, many different angles.
Yep. Yep. That's the common thread that I hear for a lot of people is that it's not just this one thing. I've had a few moments. My husband and I did ayahuasca a year and a half, 2 years ago. We started our journey with ayahuasca, including her as part of our thing. We did mushrooms for the first time this year.
Oh,
That was
wow.
that was a trip, and yeah, it allows you to really step outside of yourself or step outside of the version of yourself you think you were and realize
Yeah,
that's actually not you at all. Um,
exactly. Yeah.
and for me, that I was talking before we started recording, I was telling you about my work with my teacher here in Austria.
Yeah.
And she taught me basically everything that I know that I started doing with clients, parts work as well, somatic work, breath work, things like this. And I was able to beautifully reach these places of oneness um,
Huh?
through just that stuff, through movement, through sound, through shaking and breathing. Just that alone, I guess, was able to take me to higher states of consciousness that made it so much easier to make a decision from love with my partner. And
Yeah.
for me, it was almost weird. There was this, I don't know if you experienced this, Alex, but there came a point for me where it almost didn't feel like it's not that I didn't love my partner, but I
Yeah.
almost felt like they didn't matter that much. Does that make sense? It
Yeah.
doesn't mean that they don't, it's not that they don't
Yeah.
matter.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's that they're not the end all be all. And whether I
No,
break up with them or not doesn't actually fucking
that's
matter
right.
because the aliveness is actually that union with God.
What difference does it make?
What difference does it make? It's like
What difference does it make?
all
Well,
the aliveness is within me. So why am I
yeah.
fussing
Yeah.
about whether this person is going to give it to me because only I can do that. And
That's
once
right.
once you can feel that union or oneness, that's that the work is to keep that going. And
Well, and so
then,
many of us are
yeah,
seeking that through our romantic relationships, right? We think that like
I mean, you can
we're
get it for a
seeking,
very short time in the beginning,
yeah, right. I mean, the
but it's
honeymoon phase is
short-lived.
kind of like that's like we can feel that union, right? And but what we're not seeing human, we're seeing the divine, and we're in connection with the divine in the honeymoon phase, and we feel the freedom from all of the bullshit that we've been experiencing, and the honeymoon phase ends, and then we think that we need to find another person to get that experience again, but that's what we've experienced is within us. So the work of Robert Johnson, have you read his book We by, you got to read We, it's like the
Oh,
best. He's a
okay.
Jungian psychologist. Well, he's dead now, but he talks about the that when we fall in love with a partner, they're showing us, if we're conscious enough, if we learn this, but no one knows this, but we're seeing what's possible inside of us. They're reflecting our own divinity within us, and
Mm.
they're showing us that that's what we need to go to. We're missing the point. We're missing the point if we go to relationship to find that. And it's all within. So really, yes, relationships are great and they provide satisfaction and fulfillment in our lives. They do to some degree, but it's not the be all end all. It's we want to go within because, you know, as you
I,
know,
yeah.
yeah,
I always thought that the honeymoon phase or the spark that we experience with another person, it's a reminder of what's possible, but it's not a replacement for your connection to the divine. It'll just give
that's
you a
right.
taste. It'll be like,
That's
hey,
right.
remember to be alive and to open your heart, because it's the other person isn't necessarily what's making us feel alive. It's the fact that for whatever
That's
reason
right.
in their presence we decided to open our heart wide, and that is
Yep.
what's creating the aliveness. Um,
That's
and
right.
I also think that I also think one thing that meditation has taught me is that um, even when we're craving like more money or an object to buy, the thing that brings us pleasure is not the item, but the level of presence that we give it. And we just happen to give new objects more presence because of their
Uh,
novelty.
I love
But
that.
it's not the item that creates the joy. It's the
Right.
presence that we've given it. But imagine we were to give that level of presence to everything, whether it was new or not. That open-heartedness, that level of presence is actually what creates the aliveness and the joy.
Love it.
Mm,
Love
I
it.
love that. I'm gonna look into that book. That sounds
Oh,
really
you got to
good.
read it. I read it twice,
No
and
way.
you
Okay.
look through it, and there's underlines, and it's all, it's one of those books that I just couldn't put down. So,
Okay.
uh, it's
I'm
the
getting it.
psychology of romantic love, and he talks about love, what love really is, and what romantic love is, and it's just fantastic. For anyone of you who haven't read that, We by Robert Johnson, it's the best.
Definitely gonna put that on my Kindle. All right. Well, the so for those of you that are on the edge of your seats wondering, okay, that sounds amazing. Like, what do I do if I am in that place right now where I have, maybe I don't have access to mushrooms or it's not something I'm ready for? Not that mushrooms is a end all be all. There's psychedelics is not the only way, and I also, like you, do not always recommend it. I think those things find you.
Ketamine's legal now, though. Ketamine's
What?
legal, and there's ketamine. Have you heard
Ah,
of
yes,
ketamine?
I have heard of it. I haven't done it though.
Have you done it?
Nope,
No. There's
hasn't come my way.
okay. Well, there's clinics all around now, and there's actually the now they're offering uh uh therapy with it. So there's a there's a,
Incredible.
uh Field Trip Health in Toronto has a clinic, and they do the preparation, integration, and the therapy and all of that with it. So uh,
Wow.
anyway, for
Anyway,
for those of you who might want to find a legal alternative to doing psychedelics, ketamine is being shown to really help with anxiety and depression, OCD and PTSD and all that too. So might be
yeah,
a safer and supervised option for you.
yeah.
Anyway, just
Anyway,
to throw that
yeah,
in.
it's good because we don't actually talk about those very much on this podcast, so it's good. There's also taking substances is not the only way to heal trauma, which really that's what these
No.
substances do is they help you, they bring you to certain levels of consciousness that allow you to move trauma throughout your body, but you don't have to inject something ingest something in order to
Or inject.
it just came out of my mouth.
They inject ketamine into you.
Do they? I know nothing
There's
about
different
these things.
routes. There's different. Anyway,
Anyway,
intravenous. That
somehow
I could
keep
talk.
ending we
We could
keep
do a
ending
whole
up on this
podcast
topic.
about psychedelics.
Okay. We're gonna have to do another psychedelics episode with
Mm-hmm.
Alex Bishop. So for those of you that want to go the more, let's just say mindfulness route, who want to go almost into a state of meditation without any kind of substances, what are some of the first steps to working with parts of yourself that maybe you don't like? In the case of relationship OCD, it's the part of yourself that is not attracted to your partner and maybe the party that wants to leave. What if someone is listening to this right now and they were in that place where you were in, where they're almost sick and delusional because of
Yeah.
their intrusive thoughts, what's something that they can start to do?
Well, if you've got the money, definitely therapy. I guess that's kind of a given, right? And
Yeah.
I'm biased. I would say get an IFS therapist. Um, but in the case that you're
Just to
kind of
interrupt
just
you really
sitting,
quick. What is
yeah.
I know what it is, but for our audience, what is IFS?
Oh, okay. IFS is internal family systems therapy, and internal family systems therapy is a model that Richard Schwartz developed, and it's parts work. How do I describe this? So basically, we're all multiple personalities. We all have parts. It's normal to have parts. It's been pathologized in our culture that parts have been pathologized. So IFS is a growing model. It's evidence based, and it's showing to be incredibly useful in the treatment of trauma and virtually any psychological and even somatic issues, psychosomatic issues. Um, so basically, we have two main different types of parts. There's protective parts of us, and there are what we call exiles. And the protective parts of us try and organize our life in ways where we don't feel pain or we don't get hurt again. Let me give you an example. So let's say you're 5 years old and you just got done a really fun weekend with your friend or your family, and you're going to school the next day. And in school on Mondays is sharing time. Have you had sharing time in school, or like show and tell or something?
Yeah.
Okay. And you were so excited to share something with the class that you didn't realize another kid in class already had their hand up and was talking. So you and your excitement and your joy and your creativity and your wonder and all of it come forward, and you start saying what happened on the weekend with the class. And let's say the teacher is just a frigging grouch, and the teacher stands up and says, Natalie, don't be so ridiculous. Put your hand down, sit down, shut up, and wait your turn. How did you feel? How would you feel if that happened?
I would feel so embarrassed and my whole body would want to shrink up into a ball and never be seen again.
There you go. So what happens in these moments? And let's make it a little bit more dramatic. And let's say everyone in class then laughed or snickered under their breath.
Ah, ah,
Yeah.
ouch, ouch.
So and this is what happens. I mean,
It
this
happens all
happens,
the time.
you know,
Yeah.
and people don't think of it as anything. Like this is just a small example, but so from an IFS perspective, what happens if you don't have the support or resources to feel supported in that experience, to feel the feelings and allow you to get through it, which you didn't because everyone laughed and you have no support, and now you're just alone in your experience. Well, let me ask you, what's the only way of dealing with that situation? How do you cope in that moment?
Yeah, I would basically pretend to be the opposite of whatever I felt. So if I felt tiny and exiled, I would probably make myself big and I'm fine. I don't need anybody,
Yeah.
you know?
Could could happen, right? So there's all of these adaptations or parts take on these roles in these moments to protect us. So what happened was is you probably we would feel shame, we would feel embarrassed. Nobody cares about what I have to say would be a belief. I'm not important could be another belief. Um,
Hmm.
nobody cares about me, whatever, right? So these are all beliefs that develop, and then we feel the pain of shame and embarrassment, whatever it is. So that would be an exile. So a part of us takes on the burden from that experience, the memories, beliefs, emotions, and sensations from that experience, and we get burdened by the feelings because we aren't able to process it. So that gets stuck. And then what happens is we have parts of us called protective parts that step in that say things like, I'm going to make sure you never raise your hand in class again because I never want you to feel the same way that you felt at that time. So, we can have all kinds of parts that step in at those moments. You're right. Part of you could say, I'm not going to be small, I'm going to be bigger. Look at me or whatever. Fuck everybody. We could have dissociative parts that jump in that you check out because there's nobody there to help you deal with it. The feelings are too great. You just check out. You leave your body or whatever. Um, we could have socially anxious parts that develop that give you social anxiety so that you're not inclined to want to stand out in front of people again. You might have critics that come in, critical parts of you that say, don't talk. You nothing that you have is important to say. Don't even bother. No one gives a shit about you anyway. Those critical parts come in and they're critical to try and limit you from exposure to being embarrassed again and feel pain. So I'm going to beat others to it. So we have
Wow.
all of these potential protective parts that can develop to protect us and manage our lives moving forward in ways so that we don't feel the pain of embarrassment and shame again. So we grow up, let's say social anxiety, for example, we grow up, we feel socially anxious and we don't know why. Why am I having social anxiety? Well, if we peel back the layers and we go inside and we get to know the social anxiety, which is what we do in IFS. This was you, Alex. I have social anxiety. I don't know why. Help me deal with it. Okay. I would say, now just take a moment and see if you can find that in your body, social anxiety. And then that will be a gateway to that part of you. And through being with the body and the feelings and the emotions, the sensations, we can get in touch with this part of you who took on the role to protect you from being shamed again. And throughout this process, there's a lot more to it for those that are listening, but on a kind of on a basic level, we would ask that socially anxious part, tell it, what are you afraid would happen if you didn't give Natalie social anxiety? I'm afraid Natalie would be embarrassed and feel shame. Oh, okay. Would you be willing to let us be with the part that feels or carries the shame and embarrassment? Okay. Once we get permission, you get access to that memory that was exiled because you don't know
Mm,
why, because it gets
yeah.
pushed into the back out of consciousness because of how difficult it was. And then we have the chance to go back to that little girl who experienced that, and we get to help her to reprocess the experience. So love her. I'm here for you now. What did you need? Tell me all about it first. We witness it. Tell me all about the experience and how it felt. And she tells us, what did you need that didn't happen? Well, I needed everyone in class to stand up and support me. Like imagine being in that same situation. Instead of everyone laughing, everyone stood up and said, this isn't acceptable. We really like Natalie and we want to hear what she has to say.
Mm,
So
yeah.
you're not alone in it anymore, right? Let's
Mm,
say the child also says, I needed the teacher to apologize in front of everyone and let everyone know that she was having a bad day and it meant nothing about Natalie. So we're rewriting the narrative as it lives in our subconscious. We're making the unconscious conscious and we're correcting the experience or we're redoing it. Um, and that has a direct impact on our brain. There's memory reconsolidation, the research out. I don't know if you read anything on memory reconsolidation?
I haven't, but I have had the experience of through my imagination, my teacher, Steffi Price, basically through my imagination, had me guide myself through the circumstance I would have liked to have had in
Yep.
response to the trauma and somatically experiencing that in real time through my own imagination.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So basically, when I forget exactly how it's worded, but and there's an article, there's a free paper on memory reconciliation. You can Google it. There's a list of therapies. I think IFS is listed as one of them, but EMDR and there's accelerated dynamic experiential psych. There's a list of therapies that include memory reconciliation. And when as soon as we bring the witnessing to the exile, there are a synapse opens, and it gives the opportunity for a new connection to be made in the brain. And I think the synapse one that as soon as we seek to redo it, the synapse is open for like I think it's either 30 minutes or 3 hours or something. And it gives the brain a new opportunity to rewrite the experience. And when the new experience is there, the synapse, I think it closes. Don't quote me on any of this stuff, but this is from what I remember. So when the new experience is rewritten, it changes the landscape inside. So once it's done, we take the part out of the past, we integrate into the present moment, and instead of nobody cares about me, it's hey, even though bad things happen, even though maybe someone speaks to me in front of, I know that I have the support of others. So have a different feeling in the way it resides in us. And that way, and then once that happens, once the part releases the burden of that experience, the socially anxious part also lets go of the social anxiety. I no longer need to protect you from feeling shame because there's no more shame there.
Right.
Right. So
Yeah.
this is the transformational quality of IFS that when the wound and the memory is healed, uh, we no longer struggle with the symptoms. And that translates across all symptoms: depression, anxiety, social anxiety, relationship OCD, whatever it is. If it's linked to traumatic memory, which a lot of it is, we can heal it. And IFS gives us a way to do that in a complete way.
Mm-hmm. So,
How did
someone
that
who
resonate?
has relationship OCD with a fixation on attraction, like what are their protectors and exiles in that moment?
So this is interesting. I've found a number of different parts. It's interesting. It's not all, but I find a larger percentage of the attraction. Like I know a lot of females struggle with it too, but a lot of my male clients that I've had have struggled with attraction, mainly attraction obsessions. But what people that struggle with attraction obsessions are primarily um, their value has been based a lot on the way they look. So whether their parents heavily valued looks and attractive people, um, uh, they have it in them that hey, I'm not accepted for who I am fully, but I know that I've been accepted when I looked a certain way, or I've seen my parents glamour over people that are look a certain way, or so there's a link between hey, I'm worthy and valuable when I'm attracted, and that then gets projected onto a partner. Oh,
Yeah,
I'm worthy and valuable. Yeah.
I think for men also their sense of masculinity also is triggered by the level of attractiveness of their partner. So
Mm.
it's like if my woman is super hot and I can
Yep.
brag about it to my friends, then I'm a man if I have a hot
That's right.
woman when there's no woman that can like be hot forever.
Yeah. Right. And me being a man is also links to me being worthy, me being seen as
Wow.
somebody that's important or whatever. So what I see is the anxiety that's linked to there's different facets. So an aspect of the anxiety is like, what if I'm rejected if I'm with someone that's not? So, we're freaking out. Oh my God, we're comparing and we're checking and we're adjusting symmetry and stuff because of how unworthy part of us feels inside of us, because how horribly shameful that feels to not be accepted, especially as a child. Because if a child is not accepted, it's a complete threat to their survival, right? We need to know that we're loved and accepted for who we are. So that gets activated unconsciously, and then we're trying to do these compulsive attempts to make sure that our partner's attractive, and we're comparing as a way to deal with the feelings that are coming up and the shame that's underlying. So there's another part that, and you, if anything, if you have anything to add, please do with like any
I
of
mean,
that. But
I see this a lot. And even, Preston has a lot of guy friends, and a lot of times they don't feel like they're man enough if they don't pick like a super hot woman.
yeah,
I've seen that a lot. And it's like, you're right. It really comes down to worthiness. Cause I can imagine if you're a man, if you feel like your guy friends are talking behind your back, like, man, why is he with her? Like, he could do so much better. That
yeah,
really is so it's shame, it's shaming, it's you don't feel accepted by your choice of partner, and your manhood and aka worthiness is getting called into question based on your
that's
choice
right.
of partner. And
That's
I
right.
know this applies not just to men but women as well. And
It does.
for women it's like, wow, you settled. And that's like one of the worst things you can hear as someone with relationship OCD, is that you settled, because people assume that you made a poor choice and you face that awful pain of rejection.
Exactly.
So rather than feeling the pain that comes really from my childhood because of when I felt rejected and exiled, I will try to control my partner's appearance so that other people will be like, "Wow, she really picked a hot one." Instead,
Exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
How
And
exhausting!
oh, it's awful. It
Can't
really is
control another
awful.
person, let
No,
alone how
you
they
can't.
look.
You can't. There's another part that I found as well. And they're the parts of us that can change the way our partner looks. So we can have protective parts that can alter reality. They can change the way our reality looks. So they can make our partners look like monsters. They can change the physical appearance of our partners. And that links more to the avoidant threat response, where this person's not safe. I'll do whatever it takes to get out of this relationship. And those
Yeah.
go along with the breakup urges, and that as a way to distance. So if I can make, like, the parts thinking is, if I can, like, Natalie, let's say I'm a part of you, and this is my thinking as a part of you. If I can make Natalie disgusted with her partner, then I can repel her away from him so that she doesn't get close and she doesn't get hurt or rejected or abandoned or denied or whatever, right? So parts can all function in all kinds of different weird and amazing way. It's amazing to me. It's unsettling, but it's, to me, from an outsider's perspective, to see what parts are capable of inside of us, it's incredible.
Yeah, it is incredible. And also, you just flipped a cultural narrative on its head regarding the whole concept of the ick. Most of us think if you get the ick, that means you don't respect them, you're not into them
Bullshit.
anymore. And like that can be true. I think, I've heard some people get the ick when their partner is abusive. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense. But if your partner's just sitting on the couch and nothing is going on and nothing has been going on and you just get it out of nowhere, yeah,
That's right.
it's a brilliant
Well,
mechanism
well,
to to erode
yeah.
intimacy and avoid it.
It begs the question, though, why do you not see that they're abusive before you get the ick? Right? Like, why would the ick need to be a sign? Because if you're in an abusive relationship, there's another reason why you don't see them as abusive and see it as a problem. And that's something that we'd have to look at. Just because, but I get it, right? Like, sometimes our body's telling us, hey, this is dangerous. And consciously, we're not seeing it because perhaps the environment we were raised in was abusive, and a fish can't see the water it's swimming in. So it's normalized. This is how I'm treated. This is what love looks like. And we don't know that love is completely not being hurt or being taken advantage of or manipulated. So we would want to look at that too. right? So, but if you're right if you're with a respectful person that's trustworthy and whatever, and you get the ick, there's more beneath the surface that we want to look at. And you don't want to just, that's the thing. People with ROCD are so inclined to meaning make at every single thing that could be off or wrong. And we have to check that out. We got to go beneath the surface to find where it's really rooted in. And it's oftentimes not that you're with the wrong person. I don't believe in the wrong relationship, but there are cases where I see people that eventually they're like, fuck, I'm in this horrible relationship. And it's not because they're the wrong partner. It's because this person treats me like shit and I'm not going to put up with it anymore because now I know my worth. Before I didn't know my worth. I thought I had to deal with this stuff, but now I know my worth and I'm more than this. That's where people find inside of them, this is wrong. It's not because it's right or wrong. It's that this is not good for me. And so, but 9 times out of 10, it's like I'm with a healthy partner and it's these protective parts that are getting in the way of me feeling love and being attracted.
Yeah, I think for me, that I'm glad you brought that up because yes, I agree. And um, yeah, the abuse thing, it's a whole conversation in of its own, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I think both things can be true at the same time. There have been times where I notice I get the ick, like a sensation that I might call the ick, in response to a moment of being maybe lied to, not even in a like a brutal way, just
Mm,
like, oh, my partner said he would
mm,
do something and then he didn't, and there's a lack of
mhm.
follow through, and there's a lack of respect now, and my body has
Yep.
generated an ick. So for me, that has been helpful because
Yep.
it's a signal like, oh, something's out of integrity, not good. I want to speak it up. But there is a self trust that
Exactly.
comes with that, and I agree with you in the sense that people with relationship anxiety, relationship OCD, they have a certain degree of lack of self trust that because they don't trust themselves and their bodies, and to be able to discern between what's actually intuition and what's a fucking trauma response,
Yep.
they,
Exactly.
those are not the same thing.
No.
And that's why it's so important to look into your childhood. But um, there comes a point where you have a reference point for what love is.
Yep.
And when you have a reference point, that oneness, right? When you have a reference point for that love and oneness, you can leave a relationship from that place.
Sure.
People think that a breakup has to feel terrible and staying together has to feel wonderful. Now, actually, the reverse can totally be true as well, and that's why this
Hmm.
meaning making is not useful. The whole thing that's important to remember is to not take every little sensation at face value, because more often than not, there's a lot going on underneath the
Oh, there's so
surface.
much.
So much. So for me, the
And
ick is
we
a little
can't
bit of
get
both.
there through the
The
meaning maker. And
mind.
not to judge the meaning maker, because that's another part that has likely had to figure out our environment when we were a kid to help us deal with
Yeah, hypervigilance.
things, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I needed to, I learned that, oh, how's mom's mood right now? Or what, like these thinking, intellectual, meaning making parts were very helpful for us growing up, and they're not anymore. So we have to help them out of it. But it's problematic because, we're taking everything at face value. And it's oftentimes these meaning making parts are little kids in us. They're like inner parentified parts that, and parentified, I mean, they took on this massive role inside of our systems, our mind and our body, to help protect us. And they're little, they're kids. So we want to be able to step in as the adult and be with them and also be with the sensations that are coming up. Because now I know, like talking about kind of knowing your body, before doing this work, I didn't know my body. I was just completely cut off. So I didn't know what was going on. Now, if something happens, like, and I don't even really label it as an ick, I can just, if something's off in my relationship, I'm just like, I feel it. I don't even label it anymore. I just kind of know. I'm like, oh, this doesn't feel good. What's going on? And I just check it out.
Right, right.
It's like,
Yeah.
are we okay? Like, it's not like, oh my God, I'm feeling disconnected. It's problems like, I'm feeling disconnected. Something's going on right now. I mean, I don't jump to conclusions anymore. There's more of a connection within my mind and my brain and my nervous system. Everything feels more connected. And I have just sort of a knowing of like what's happening inside of me. It's not like I get an ick and I'm like, oh fuck, what's this ick? It's like, no, like there's an emotional quality to it. There's a sensation here. Maybe I don't know exactly what it is all the time. Like sometimes I get anxious and I don't know why I'm anxious, but I can pretty easily find out if I just check in. Like, oh, it's because I haven't figured out my finances or whatever. And a part of me is, whatever.
Yeah. I mean, what I'm hearing you say, Alex, is there's a difference between being with a wordless sensation or a
Mm,
wordless an inner experience that doesn't necessarily need a labeling using a word that everybody seems to think means something very specific. I remember on TikTok
mm.
just a couple weeks ago, I was kind of questioning the word settle. You know how much I hate the word settle. And I was
Yeah,
like, what if we redefine settling to, making a choice despite uncertainty about the future? And you know how culture is. That I was like, oh, honey, everyone was like, tell me you settled without telling me you settled. And I was like, man, y'all are missing the point. And I think ick
yeah,
is maybe the same way. And really, any word is so subjective, especially in today's day and age where people, create their own meanings for words. So I might have a sensation that I label the ick, and someone else might hear the word ick and think about their sensation that they have that they've labeled ick, and they assume we're
yeah,
having the same sensation when we might be having two
yeah.
completely different inner experiences that we're labeling the same thing.
That's right.
Which is why it's good to notice these words. Anyway, I feel like we could go on just about this for a while, but
Mhm.
one of the things I wanted to ask you, because I haven't actually been talking about OCD for a while.
Sure.
I specifically just mostly work just with relationship anxiety.
Yeah, yeah.
I hesitate as a non-licensed therapist to speak on disorders, but since we're
Got
here,
it.
let's do it. But I also wanted to I know about your stance on ERP, which is exposure response prevention. I
Yeah.
have the same stance as you, but I haven't really shared it, but I would love to know
Okay.
yours.
Well, I don't know. Like here's the thing. This is how I feel.
What is ERP?
Well, okay. And this is how I need to kind of lead into this conversation. I don't have training in ERP. Um, I don't know everything about it, but what I do know about it from my just looking it up and knowing, and from my clients' experiences, and just from doing a little bit of research on it, is that ERP is exposure and response prevention. So the idea is that we expose ourselves to something that's triggering, and instead of doing the thing that we feel would reduce the anxiety, which would be a compulsion, we sit with the feeling and we tell ourselves that it's not as threatening as we thought. So, for example, I used to have contamination OCD when I was growing up. So I would wash my hands to the point where they would bleed. And so I did my own ERP, and I didn't even know what ERP was. I was a clever bugger when I was growing up. I found ways to like deal with my symptoms without anybody's help at all, which is I think is incredible. So I got to give it to that
Genius.
part of me, because a part of me figured it out. And I'm actually just having a realization. What I think is what happened is because I'm dominated by intellectual parts mainly. Um, Part of me, a figure it out part, figured out a way to help me navigate difficulty by using my intellect, and he's incredibly intelligent. So anyway, what he did, I guess what I'm learning right now as I talk, what he figured out was this part of me figured out a way to do ERP without knowing it. So what I did was I I so this is where ERP works. And because ERP does work for some people and it can be
Yes.
really helpful. Like
Yes.
and not like I had someone that that emailed me that said and I get this, like people on Instagram and stuff, they say ERP made things worse, which can happen too. So I think there is a place for it, and perhaps there's also the practitioner plays into that as well as a where it can be problematic. But what where it does work, and what I did was I stopped washing my hands because I thought this is where the obsession was for me. Something bad is going to happen. I'm going to contaminate my family. I'm going to make them sick or ill. So I need to wash my hands so that doesn't happen. So I would, like maybe I touch my butt or something. Like,
Yeah.
and I'm like, fuck, like I got shit on my hand or something. This is
Yeah.
how it
It's
happened,
very
right?
real. Very
And I'm
real.
like,
Yeah.
oh my God, I'm such a horrible person. If I touched my ass and I touched someone and there was shit on it and I got on them, how fucking shitty am I to do that? And that's shame. This is the shame that I still carry to some degree within my system, very much less than it was because of some of the work that I've done. But that's so shame is OCD is rooted in shame. I strongly believe that, and that's why I believe it's trauma response. So I stopped washing my hands because intellectually I knew this is so dumb. Like, what am I doing? So I stopped and I realized that, hey, nothing bad is happening. And like my family's not going to die or they're not going to get sick or whatever. So I was able to deal with that through exposing myself to the anxiety of not washing my hands and preventing the response that I would normally do by doing the compulsion,
Yeah. It's like a
which, well,
willpower almost. It's your
yeah,
will to override the compulsion.
yeah. And
Yeah.
it can be incredibly painful for people to do that because the anxiety that they're experiencing is very overwhelming. So to sit with it can be very painful. So the reason, so yes, it's helpful for some people, and I think that it could be a good coping skill for people. But the problem with ERP is that, especially with relationship OCD, it's too complex for ERP, I think, for a lot of people because your partner is so triggered. Your partner is the object of the thing, right? So and we have the attachment issues that come into play. And ROCD is heavily rooted in attachment issues. It's not just this obsession and compulsion that we have to do, like washing our hands or whatever. It goes a lot deeper than that. So I think we need a more well-rounded approach to deal with that. So that's why I prefer to use something like IFS because ERP is also not transformational. It doesn't heal anything. And it actually, its perspective is that it's not rooted in trauma or wounding. So it doesn't look at what's under the surface. It actually, what from my understanding, and I, I invite any corrections on this for anyone who might know better.
Yes,
From
me
my
too.
understanding, it says that looking deeper is a problem because it can because people with OCD get so focused on what is this? I'm like, where is this coming from? That it says it's easier to just not worry about where it's coming from and just do the thing, do the
Right. And
system, right?
that's valid, but I also think it
Fair
lacks
enough.
some context. And one of the reasons I love parts work and the more sophisticated form of parts work being IFS is that I sense that with ERP, there is an override that has to happen. You are overriding your fear response. You are overriding the compulsion that is designed to help you get rid of anxiety.
Yeah,
And you're not actually kind of getting the consent of your fear because
that's right.
there's a difference between I'm scared and I want to keep going, which is this case of
Yeah,
like I want to get married, I'm afraid, but I'm scared and I want to do it anyway, versus I'm scared and I don't want to do it.
exactly.
Because if you're in the place of I'm scared and I want to do it anyway, ERP is fantastic.
Hmm.
Versus and you can use mindfulness as a tool to heal your sensations. And like imagine we were to use ERP as a part of IFS. That would be amazing. Because
Hmm. Hmm.
you're doing an exposure with consent to your own
That's right.
fear. Whereas when you're doing an exposure and your fear is like, fuck, fucking stop giving this to me. I don't want this right now. Then all you're in that from that lens,
You're doing harm.
you're actually doing harm. And that's
Yeah.
why I don't believe that there is a one size fits all healing modality. Even the stuff that I share and the stuff that's worked for me could be re-traumatizing for someone else. And that's why I'm glad you bring this up. And I love these nuanced perspectives where it's not either or, it's both and.
I think so too, and I will add to what you said, where where you said the compulsion is a part. It is a part, and the problem with ERP is that, first of all, it's not looking at parts at all. It's just looking at brain mechanics, and it's labeling our brain as just this mechanical thing that,
It's faulty. There's
but
something wrong.
that's faulty. Whereas
Yeah.
IFS looks at all of these parts as wonderful beings that need our help. So by exiling the compulsions, which is what's happening, don't do when you see it. Oh, is that a compulsion? Is this a compulsion? Oh my God! Stop! Stop resisting the compulsions, but be with the compulsions. Like, go and be with the compulsive part, because that part is trying to help. So let's heal whatever it's trying to help with, which is the shame. So if we can heal the shame, the compulsive part doesn't need to jump in to do its thing, and then it will be relieved. So that's why I think, it's really, I mean, it's heartbreaking because we're resisting the thing that's trying to help us in the only way that it knows how. And these compulsivers, they care about us, they love us, they want to help, they've been doing this for a really long time, and they're really tired. So, I think that there's a better way. There's a better way to go about doing it. And maybe it is, right? Maybe we do a little bit of exposure, but let's from an IFS lens, let's be with the parts in a way that's helpful for them versus harming and doing them a disservice, because they
Mm.
need our help.
Yeah, that's such a compassionate view. And it makes me want to like hug all my parts, all my,
Yeah.
because I can only imagine that, this isn't just about OCD. This is really about any addiction,
It's
um,
about anything.
and with anything. So any addiction, whether it's any substance or, um, porn addictions,
Yep.
alcohol, smoking, things like this. The IFS model doesn't see you as broken. It sees you as completely whole, and you've just got parts that get activated to
Yeah.
as protector parts to
Yeah.
help you feel more safe and free of shame.
And OCD is in a way an addictive issue,
Oh yeah.
because we're addicted to our thoughts,
Yes.
right?
Yeah.
We're addicted to the thoughts because we can't stop them, and we feel like we need to do it.
That's an
It's a shitty
addiction to
addiction
like
because
reassurance. Yeah.
reassurance. Yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And
Wow.
I mean, I'd prefer to do heroin than think like that. But hey, I mean, whatever works.
Whatever works. Whatever works, man. Well,
And just so everyone knows, I've never done heroin, so
just need to
oh,
add
like,
that little, just like
let's just be clear. It would be
Alex, the
okay if I did.
therapist who does not do heroin, but does recommend
Yeah.
ketamine.
Well, I don't recommend ketamine. I'd say look into it, but
Sorry,
psychedelics have helped. So
that was the wrong word.
yeah,
Recommend was the wrong word to choose. But so thank you for correcting me. Um, yes. Well, this has been phenomenal. Thank you for sharing your wisdom with us, your story, and I'm hopeful that everyone who's listening has a lot. I hope all of you listening feels so much compassion for yourselves and so much more self acceptance because A, you're not alone. B, there is a way out. And um, it's not through resisting yourself and beating yourself up over the head.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So, where can we find you?
You can find me on Instagram at For Love We Heal. I'm on Threads now, which is, I think, the same. Is it the same way to get to Threads? I don't know. I'm on
It's just,
Threads. You can
we're all on
find
threads. We
me.
don't know what's going on, but
I
we're
don't
all there.
know. It's on Threads. I don't know what's up with that. Uh, Yeah, I'm just mainly on Instagram right now.
Cool.
So you can find me on there, and from there, if you want to work with us or you want to book with a practitioner, you can do so. But yeah, you can find me on there and check my stuff out, and that'll be good.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for coming on today. It was a complete pleasure.
Sweet, thanks.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll talk to you soon. I'm sure we'll have you back at some point. All
Cool.
right. Cool. Have a great day. Thanks again for being here. Thanks so much for listening to the Anxious Love Coach today. If you loved this episode, please hit that subscribe button, leave a review, and follow me on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube, and maybe share it with someone that you believe might benefit from these perspectives. Please also subscribe to my email list at www.anxiouslovecoach.com, as I'm trying to reduce my reliance on social media. In exchange, you will receive my free relationship anxiety meditation and more supportive tools sent your way. If you would like to work with me, head on over to my website at, again, anxiouslovecoach.com to explore different tiers of coaching options and online programs. Thanks again for listening, and catch you in the next episode. Have a blessed day.